Your 20s don't have to be hard. Run it back. Your 20s do not have to be the hardest, most painful, most challenging years of your life. This video is the epitome of big sis advice because literally someone just gave my sister advice about how her 20s are going to be the most painful, challenging years of her life. And I got really pissed off because number one, that's my sister. I'm very overprotective of the advice she hears from other people, just like I'm overprotective of you. So if you're not into the whole tough love advice, you know what to do. My 20s were the best years of my life. My 20s were the most transformative years of my life. I owe everything that I am today to who I decided to be in my 20s. And if I can go back to my 23, 24-year-old self who was going through it, I would freaking clap. I wouldn't even hug her. She doesn't even need a hug, okay? I would tell her, keep doing what you're doing. You got this. You're doing it. You are so ahead of your time. You are so freaking smart. I'm so proud of you for choosing to do it your way and not everyone else's way. Stop accepting other people's experiences as your reality, my love. Just because someone else had the most terrible time of their life in their 20s does not mean that that needs to be the case for you if that's not the story that you want for yourself. Your 20s are difficult, not because they're uniquely difficult. Everybody does different things in their 20s. My parents were having 2 of their 4 children in their 20s and moving to a whole different freaking country. Not everybody's 20s are created equally. Everyone has a different perspective that they can choose to apply to their given reality. So even 2 people with the same reality, if that even exists, can have 2 different perspectives on that. And that's why I really want to stress the importance of that choice. Like, you can choose to look at your life through a different perspective, regardless what you're going through. Your 20s are uniquely challenging potentially because you feel this pressure to figure out what you want to do with your career, which we'll get to, because I definitely didn't figure that out in my 20s. You feel this pressure to figure out what kind of person you want to be with. You feel like there's just so much pressure, and the choices in your 20s feel uniquely permanent, but you don't feel uniquely equipped to make those types of choices. So I understand there is this dissonance between the expectations that you feel the world is putting on you and the amount of emotional capacity and preparation you feel to make those choices. I want to first start this entire video off just drilling into your head that you get to decide what your story looks like. This is not just about your 20s. The best thing that I did was learn to write my own story from a young age. And when I talked to my sister about that advice, she also is choosing to write her own story. Let's say we turned her 20s into a movie. She does not want the title to be Painful, Hard, Worst Years of My Life. She wants the title to be something that really acknowledges the growth, the evolution that she's going through, the identity shifts that she's going through. And that's how I chose to look at my 20s, through the pain, through the grief. I lost 2 close family members during that time. I had my fair share of toxic dating experiences. Like, all of those things colored my 20s, but I decided what color they colored my 20s in. Don't get it twisted. Life is all about being wrong. I wish I knew this. Like, if I could go back to that younger self, this is what I would tell her. You only need to be right one time for all of those wrongs to be irrelevant. Life is not about being right. Life is about finding right, and you need to stumble across all of these barriers and missteps and get rerouted and redirected in order to understand what right is. This goes for career, this goes for relationships, this goes for even something like religion or spirituality. This goes for habits. Like, you need to try a bunch of things out. And sometimes this isn't everyone's story. Like, I'm sure we all know somebody who married their high school sweetheart or got a career coming out of high school or college and just stayed in that career. But I'm positive that that same exact person in other areas of their life is still finding right. And sometimes those people, 30 years into that marriage or into that career, realize that it might have been the right thing for them for that time period, but now they have to go on this new quest of finding the career that's right for them at that period of time. Stop putting so much pressure on yourself to be right. I struggled so much through my 20s because I really wanted to find the right career. I'm 31, and this is the first time in my life that this is right. Like, I found right. That doesn't mean I've been able to create a career out of it the way that I want to, but I know that it's right, and I feel so affirmed and excited because I'm literally creating that for myself. It took so much trial and error. It's so ironic though, because I thought of this the other day. I don't know if I had buried this memory or what, but in 5th grade, there was this program at my elementary school where 2 students would report the news to the rest of the elementary school. And I was one of the 2 students that would go to the principal's office, sit like, on the little anchor chair in front of the camera and report whatever the relevant news was to elementary schools at that time. And my face was on camera and I was speaking in front of my whole elementary school. I thought about that the other day and I got emotional because I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've always wanted. Fast forward all the way to college, I wanted to be a journalist. I had applied to this internship in DC and I got rejected. And I spent my whole sophomore year of college feeling so low and feeling so depressed because I thought that my dreams were just crumbling in front of me. I didn't know what I wanted. So this feeling of uncertainty of what do I actually want was looming over me. Then I started to feel like my career needs to be in education. I'm so passionate about education. I became a teacher for 2 years. And then after those 2 years, I'm like, oh my God, I should start my own school system because I come from a family of a lot of educators. And if you read some of my notes from my notes section during that time, I was so positive that this was what I was gonna do for my whole life. Like, I was 100% sure that I was gonna basically go to business school and create this whole school system on my own with its own curriculum, its own ways of thinking, its own ways of educating. I did go to business school with that in mind. And then I ended up switching my career in business school because I realized that I was actually in love with media and entertainment. And I actually felt like the best way to impact young people is through this. Do you think that I had this language at the time? Like in the depths of my 20s, being confused AF about career stuff. Do you think that I felt like all these little switches were leading me somewhere that makes sense? To be honest, not until I say it out loud like this do I even feel like that right now. Like, I'm happy I'm here and I don't care that it took me so many different trials and errors to be here because I know that it's all going to make sense. And once it makes sense and there's that little puzzle piece moment, all of those things are just going to be great stories. I love the wrongs, the missteps, the little trial and error that you're going through, whether it's you trying to find the right person, whether it's you trying to land on a habit that works well for you. Maybe you're like rearranging your routine and trying to find what works for you. That is all going to make sense one day as long as you keep going. The only way that it's never going to make sense is if you quit. As long as you keep going and you keep trying to find right and what is right for you, all of those wrongs will become such good stories. Every single podcast that you listen to or YouTube video that you're inspired by, when you hear about somebody's success story, the best parts of that video are not the success. I promise. I know you feel me on this. The best parts of those podcasts or those videos are all of the things that they had to try on to get to the success that they're talking about. Like, those are always the most compelling parts of those success stories, the parts that resonate with you the most, the parts that make you feel the most inspired. And so lean into that and please carry no shame around changing your mind and being wrong. Be wrong as many times as you need to be, but just keep searching for right. Third thing that I'm still learning in my 30s is that most things are gray. Things are very seldom, if ever, black and white. Most things live in a gray area. I think because of what we just discussed around wanting to like predict outcomes and know what I'm gonna do with my life and know what type of person I'm gonna end up with, I felt the need to create these very restrictive black and white rules about life. I just started creating all of these like rules that made me feel very conflicted all the time. If I do that, then that must mean I'm that type of person. But because I said I'm this type of person, then I'm not supposed to do those things. And honestly, it made me so serious all the time. Like, I don't want to be a serious person. And it wasn't until my later 20s, honestly, when my dad passed away, when I had all of these like series of very humbling moments in life where I could no longer exist in the black or the white. I couldn't be someone who was only grieving because I was also feeling so much gratitude. Like there was so much nuance in my life. And I learned to live in that gray area. I learned to live in that nuance There was a period of time where, because I saw myself as intellectual, deep, professional, I would be embarrassed if I was holding like an iced latte in a video. I know that that might sound to you very ridiculous, but that was the extent of how weird my rules were. Like I was the type of person that before we got this coffee machine at home, I would literally buy an iced latte every single day, and I would feel embarrassed if I was vlogging to showcase that part because I felt like I couldn't be both deep and basic at the same time. When in fact, I am an extremely intellectual, deep woman who embraces the basic bitchery of life. Like that's just who I've always been. I've always been basic. I've always wanted to get my nails done and like have them look pretty much perfect. I've always bought the pretty aesthetically appealing textured cups with like the glass straws. I've always been someone who likes matching sets. But I was so embarrassed by the nuance of it, that I could be so intelligent, that I could be someone with such deep poetic thoughts and talks about social justice on one day and then talks about like an aloe yoga haul on the next day. Like I never felt like I had permission to be someone that asked her man to cater to her because I was an independent woman. And it's like, bitch, you could be both. Like I am very independent. I'm a boss bitch who also wants my husband to open doors for me and carry my bags for me. Like, why can't we be both? So I want to urge you, as you are figuring life out, as you are trying to understand who you are, give yourself grace. Allow grayness. It is the most beautiful part of my personality today. In my opinion, the things that make me the coolest and most unique are the things that exist in the nuance, the unpopular opinions that people wouldn't expect me to have, the hot takes that would break your brain about someone like me, because we are all so unique. We all bring such a unique experience and perspective to the world. And if you try to fit into these black or white spaces, then you are just trying to replicate something that you've already seen instead of carving out something that can inspire someone who's never seen it before. Be gray and embrace that. The next one will hit you really hard. Your results are telling the truth about you. This one was a very hard pill for me to swallow. In fact, I'd never swallowed it in my 20s. I spit it right out. I vividly remember a conversation. I was 29. I was already married. I was in Lebanon, sitting at a cafe with my husband and my mom. And I was talking about my weight. And weight, body image, all of that carried throughout my 20s. Like I struggled with that all throughout my 20s. And I was sitting down kind of having a heart-to-heart with my mom about like my efforts of trying to lose weight and how I felt like I wasn't in control of my body, and just like really being open about that. And my husband, God bless his soul, my husband was giving me advice, and I remember getting really triggered because I was feeling misunderstood, and I felt like what he was trying to say was that I wasn't doing enough when I felt like I was doing enough. And so I vocalized that, and he said something to the effect of like, boo, I mean this with all respect, but when I see the results, then I'll believe it. And I got so mad. I was offended. I got upset. I got emotional. I just felt like it was such an attack on all the work I was putting in. But I swear he was so right. He was so right. And honestly, the fact that I was not ready to hear it just proves how right he was, because I heard that same message, I want to say a year later, not about weight, but just in general, like your results are telling the truth about you. And I remember like, oh, I believe it. Something in me believes that that's true, but in order for me to believe it, I have to also apply it to this area of my life. And what does that mean about me? Now, the reason that it's so hard for you to accept that the results in your life, relationship-wise, if it is body image-wise, maybe it's career-wise, whatever your external reality looks like is a result of who you believe that you are. I have whole videos about this, but I want you to understand why. You can think that you want something, but your reality will reflect something completely opposite of what you want. You don't actually feel like you have responsibility over that thing that you're trying to change. You do not want to take responsibility for the fact that your results do not tell the story that you want them to tell, because if you took responsibility, then you would have nobody or nothing else to blame. That was what happened to me in that moment. When my husband said that, I got angry because he was trying to say that I'm responsible for my results, when I really wanted to say that my metabolism is responsible for my results. My body is just dysfunctional. I just can't lose weight the same way everybody does. The scale is just not really reflecting things the way that it should. Like I had all these excuses. I would even blame things on him sometimes and be like, Ahmed wants to order food 5 times a week and it's really hard for me to be able to like stay on track, when it's like nobody's shoving that food down my throat. Sure, it is a unique challenge to have a partner who wants to eat pizza a couple times a week. You are responsible for whether you choose to eat with him or eat something that's more aligned to your goals. You are responsible, and only you, for how many jobs you choose to apply to every single day. You and only you are responsible for how quickly you break something off with someone when you see red flags. Nobody else is responsible for that. Nobody is going to pick you up and drop you in the circumstance that you want. You are responsible whether or not these circumstances are your fault. Is it your fault that the guy that you dated a couple times love bombed you? No, of course it's not your fault. What you do after that though will be your fault. Once you're informed and you realize that this person is not healthy for you, do you keep hitting them up? Then yes, it's your fault. Regardless, it's your responsibility. And because some of our internal narrators, I know mine in my 20s was a huge judgmental bitch. She was ruthless, she was mean. My internal narrator would beat me up if I failed at stuff. If you know that the voice in your head is brutal and ruthless, then you might be telling yourself that you're not responsible for outcomes in your life because you're scared of her. You're scared of what that voice in your head is going to tell you. The best advice I can give you here before we go on to number 5 is to start journaling. I have my journal right here. She's my best friend. She is beyond a best friend because I don't dump stuff on my best friends. I dump stuff in here so that I can hold it object, like literally hold it and be like, oh, these are the thoughts that were in here. I just cleaned it out. Do I want these thoughts or do I not want these thoughts? Because she just tried to tell me that I'm a lazy bitch. Do I want to believe that or do I not want to believe that? When you take your thoughts out of your head and materialize them into something, you're able to hold them object. There's a separation between who you believe yourself to be and what your narrator is trying to tell you you are. And you're able to decide whether you want to subscribe to those beliefs or not. So in order for you to start taking more responsibility over your life and therefore actually create the reality that you want, I would recommend getting this person closer to on the same side of how you want them to talk to you. If you want more on this, I literally have a whole entire video called Your Results Are Telling the Truth About You. Enjoy. Last but certainly not least is stop trying to escape complex emotions that you are feeling. My 20s were filled with some of the most intense, complex emotions that I've ever experienced. I'm only 31, but I can't access the depth of emotion, positive or even negative, that I felt in my 20s. I don't know if this is due to the fact that I was grieving a lot in my 20s. I lost a couple close family members. I don't know if this was because I was really coming into my identity. I'm not really sure why the highs were higher and the lows were lower. One thing that I wish someone told me was to embrace all of it. And one thing I did a great job of, especially when I was in deep grief, was understand that grief and gratitude are not mutually exclusive. Some of my most grateful days were the days that I also spent crying. Like, you know, when you cry so much that you feel dehydrated, like I cried, the grief was just coming out of me, like I couldn't control it. It was literally uncontrollable crying and pain. And at the same time, it was like unfathomable joy and gratitude. And I remember being like, these are the most confusing sets of emotions that I would have never paired together, but here we are. And I just kind of like let myself feel all of it. And it really taught me, I think, one of the most important, beautiful lessons in life is that things can be bittersweet. And it's actually so funny because when I was young in high school, I was obsessed with this concept of bittersweetness. I don't know why, but something about this seemingly contradictory thing coming together to make such a beautiful, nuanced emotion, like bittersweet. I loved it. And I would like write it on places. I even had it as like one of my passwords for like a few years. I loved the idea of something being bittersweet. And I think it's because I was always like very emotionally in tune and emotionally intelligent. I liked being able to name very complex emotions. And when I describe my 20s, they really were bittersweet. And I liked both parts. It wasn't that I wanted them to be more sweet or less bitter. I liked both parts. I liked the pain. When I had tough breakups or tough moments with a toxic ex, I'm not trying to recreate them by any means, but I'm so grateful that I went through that and I let myself feel those things, because it taught me so much about myself. It taught me so much about my emotional capacity. It taught me so much about how I wanted to handle challenging emotions. And now I know without a shred of doubt that no matter what comes my way, I have dealt with very complex, confusing, difficult emotions, and I will always figure out how to deal with it. The number one reason that I know I will figure out how to deal with it is because I won't be trying to escape those feelings. I won't be trying to push them out and bottle them in. I will just feel them. I'll go on the roller coaster ride. I will surrender and just let myself feel what it is that my body is feeling during that time. Don't judge yourself for that. If you are really sad about a breakup, or if you lost a family member or a close person in your life and you laugh in that period, that's okay. I remember literally when my dad passed away, in my culture, literally hours after he passed away, we had to go to the Islamic center, and people would come and kind of say their blessings or whatever you call it. It's a really complicated scenario because you're grieving in front of an audience. It was very weird. There was literally a long table of all the family member, the men on one side, the women on one side. We are facing an audience of people who are just watching us and waiting in line to come and go through the line and give their blessings. And so I remember feeling my feelings, but it's I don't give a shit about what you guys want me to feel. Funny things were happening, okay? My humor is very dark, and my little sister, I really wanted to make her laugh. So I basically would look at certain people and find cartoons that looked like them, under the table, and show my sister the cartoon that looked like certain people. And so we'd kind of go like this and start laughing. And some people thought we were just crying, but some people might have known we were laughing. And I remember my aunt, within a week, basically told me something trying to shame me for daring to laugh the next day. People were wondering if there's something wrong with you, or if you just don't love your dad because you were laughing. And I kind of felt like she made that up, if I'm being honest. I don't feel like anyone would have the audacity to even say that to her. And if they did, then she's op. But it's don't tell me how to feel. Don't try to tell me whether I'm sad that my freaking favorite man in the entire world just died. I went through a lot a few hours ago, okay? We won't get into that right now, but I was deeply traumatized. I was deeply in shock. But what I wasn't gonna do is add on more layers of shame and self-abuse by telling myself that what I was feeling was not okay. So I let myself feel however the fuck I wanted to feel. I was in shock. I was looking at things very positively. I was grateful that I had a dad like him. Those were the feelings that I was having. And yes, I was fucking devastated, right? Devastated. And I was letting myself cycle through those emotions as they came. Certain funny things happened. I wanted to laugh. I like to laugh. I don't want to live a freaking day on this planet that does not include laughter. Yes, including the day that my dad passes away. I know that my dad is not upset that I chose to find little moments of joy and happiness during that day. So this is I feel like I am defending my younger self right now, and I hope that shines through. I hope that you feel that protection too. Don't let anybody tell you how you're supposed to feel about stuff. You are the only person that is going through the thing that you're going through in the way that you're going through it. You are the only person whose neurons are firing in a specific way as a result of something happening. So allow yourself, at the very least, as you go through challenging things, give yourself full permission to just take the emotions as they come. This is your journey. This is the most personal journey on this planet. You don't need anyone else to tell you how you're supposed to go through that. You don't need anyone else to tell you that there's an appropriate way to emotionally react to something. So give yourself the most intimate blessing and gift that you could, and just let yourself feel those emotions as they feel most authentic and natural to you. There is no such thing as an inappropriate feeling. There's inappropriate reactions and ways of acting, but there's no such thing as an inappropriate feeling. And there's no such thing as feelings that don't go together. So stop trying to escape or dictate those emotions and just let yourself feel all of the beautiful and complex and life-changing emotions that you will cycle through in your 20s and every year after that. I really hope you found value and, more importantly, comfort. I hope you found comfort in this video. Let me know below if you have any other ideas or questions when it comes to navigating your 20s in a way that you feel proud of and excited for. I love you so, so, so much. And as always, stay powerful, my love.